Good morning, John. The question before us is, are there millions of 150-year-olds receiving Social Security payments? And the answer is no. In fact, no one over the age of 115 is receiving Social Security payments because in 2015, the government updated its systems to ensure that anyone who turns 115 years old is declared dead and they stop receiving payments. Now, as we will see later in the video, this is not a particularly important way that we decrease Social Security fraud, but it is a really cheap way, and I'm glad we're doing it. And 100%, there is Social Security and pension fraud in the world, and the best story that I know about it is blue zones. So blue zones are areas of the world where government records show that people are much more likely to live to be very old. Okinawa, Sardinia, some areas of Costa Rica and Greece. And after identifying this effect in government databases, people did a lot of research to try and figure out what's different about those places. What do they eat there? What's their physical activity like? How can we be like them so that more of us can live to be 115? Well, it turns out that among other explanations, one contributing factor is that blue zones are in areas of the world where records are not well kept. And what happens is if the government has no record of your birth, you might lie and say you were born in 1940 when you were actually born in 1950, so you can start getting your retirement benefits sooner. And then that person might eventually live to be 100 years old, which is very unusual, but not that unusual, and not as unusual as living to be 110, which is what the country's records would then say. I love this. I love when science finds something weird and chases it in the wrong direction for a while. And look, there's probably also some good stuff about the lifestyles of Sardinia and Okinawa. What we've mostly learned is lean protein, fiber, and walking around and having people who care about you in your life. Those are like the big ones for longevity. And another way this might show up is if records are currently not kept well, people might die, and then their relatives might simply never report their death to the government, and they would keep collecting those retirement benefits for like a decade or two. That kind of fraud really does happen, and it is illegal, and it should be stopped, but I should probably say that this isn't the majority of Social Security fraud. And I almost put that in air quotes because the majority of Social Security fraud is overpayment. It is living people who are supposed to be getting Social Security benefits who are getting more than they legally should get. Social Security is means tested, which basically means you get more money if you have less money. If you go back to work, your Social Security benefits might go down, and you might not want to report to the government that that happened so that your benefits don't go down. In the same way, if you're paying for your own housing as a recipient of Social Security, you get more benefits. So you might be incentivized to make it look like you're paying for your own housing, even if you are living with a loved one or something. And that is by far where the majority of Social Security fraud comes from. But in any of these situations, whether it's somebody saying that they are older than they are, a person collecting benefits from a dead person, or somebody just not telling the government the full story about their whole financial situation so that they can collect more benefits, the solution to those problems are mostly a more robust administrative state and more bureaucratic hoops for everybody to jump through, requiring people to tell the government when somebody's born, when somebody dies, when somebody changes their housing or employment situation. And then in order to get people to do that stuff, you actually have to have penalties for not doing it. And you have to enforce those penalties on everyone, not just people who are going to do fraud, but everyone, so that you can know when people end up doing fraud. So you have to have more bureaucracy and more government oversight, which is not the kind of thing that small government conservatives tend to be hugely in favor of, but it is pretty high on the list of ways we actually fight against fraud. Now, importantly, it seems like in the US, we do a pretty good job of controlling the kind of fraud that is many people collecting the benefits of dead people. And I can prove that to you. The Inspector General of the Social Security Administration did an audit in 2023, just a couple of years ago, and found that there were literally tens of millions of people in their database over 100 years old. And that, interestingly, was public information. It was shared then with the world, and it was not a big news story. And it is the information that we are now basing this conversation that is being had at the national level on, which is very interesting to me. So you got to ask, why wasn't it a big news story in 2023? Because we already knew through an audit that's done more frequently than this like dead people audit, that only around 90,000 people over the age of 99 are collecting benefits in the US right now. So it doesn't really matter if there are tens of millions of people over the age of 100 in the database. What matters is how many people are actually collecting benefits. And so there are around 90,000 people over the age of 100 collecting benefits, and the US Census Bureau estimates that roughly 86,000 Americans are over the age of 100. And since pretty much all of those people would be collecting some amount of Social Security, a little mental math shows that this kind of centenarian fraud might exist, but it's not a massive deal. And this is the thing that made me make the video. Everyone in the government knows this. Elon Musk might not have known it when he started posting on Twitter about how he felt as if he was uncovering the biggest fraud in all of history, but he's certainly been told about it by now. And Donald Trump, who was and is the president, definitely knew about it when he brought it up in the State of the Union this week. Which makes you wonder, why would a president spend so much of his State of the Union talking about the number of people over the age of 100 who are in the Social Security database when he knows that only 90,000 of those people, which is roughly the number of people over the age of 100 in America, are actually getting benefits. Now, obviously, this database could be a lot less messy. The government actually chose to not clean it up after doing a cost estimate to figure out how much it would cost to clean it up, which would be $8 million, which is both like a lot of money and not a lot of money. It seems like it might have been well spent in order to prevent the avalanche of information that we are now dealing with, but perhaps those bureaucrats did not expect that these very powerful people would have this little regard for the truth. My opinion, this is all very silly and messy and distracting. We could or could not spend the money to clean up the Social Security database. We could even pay to port it into a more modern system, which I think would probably be good and would certainly save eventually on administrative costs after an initial outlay of cash to get it done carefully and safely, of course. And we could absolutely do more to prevent fraud and overpayments, but that will include the kind of bureaucracy that everybody has to deal with, even though most people are never going to do fraud. But I think we should be honest about the fact that there are costs to doing that, and those costs include annoying bureaucracy that people who will never do fraud have to interface with because some small portion of people will do fraud, and without the bureaucracy, we simply cannot catch them. And we have to understand that we would be adding all of that extra cost and bureaucracy to make people's lives a little bit worth in order to recover the less than 1% of Social Security's benefits that we think are lost to overpayment and fraud. Now look, I do not like the idea that people are defrauding Social Security. I think that's terrible, but I think it's mostly being done by people who don't think they're doing anything that important, just not reporting a change in income or a living situation that would decrease their benefits because they don't feel enough respect for the system to do the right thing, and also they want those benefits. But also maybe part of the reason they don't respect the system is because they're constantly being told that it's corrupt. So what I really don't like is the most powerful man in the world and the richest man in the world teaming up to intentionally mislead America about the scale of Social Security fraud. I think that's really bad, and it shows a really significant lack of respect for the country and its people. John, I'll see you on Tuesday. And as I sometimes do over on Hank's channel when it's a more serious topic, a little palate cleanser at the end to hit that connections, which I didn't expect to see this. There must be a little bit of a, let's say, a red herring in there, a green herring, possibly. Paper taper. They do rhymes. Some sentences they do rhymes. Prune means to cut or to cut back. Dwindle also kind of means that. But that's like a passive form of pruning. I don't have anything so far. Stone is also a weed word. Is that what we're doing today? Castle is like a chess move. It's a TV show. It is a place where you protect yourself. Taper, dwindle, prune. Is that it? Taper and dwindle definitely mean the same thing. Taper, dwindle, fade, and prune I'm a little bit on the edge for. That's it though. Let's get those clumped up. Ooh, nice. All right, now those are all in this line here. And I'm gonna say slide, weed, a weed, a weed. I mean, piper? Pied Piper? Dwindle, fade, prune, tape. I'm still not a big fan of prune here. These are plant things. I mean, plant is a plant thing. Prune, weed, and water are all things you would do in a garden. And plant, I guess, you would also plant plants. That's a verb, in addition to being a noun. And prune, weed, I don't know. There's got to be another one. Stone, flat, peter out. Okay. All right. Okay. So we've got dwindle, fade, taper, peter, prune, weed, plant, water. Slide is like a water slide. Slide is action you do. Slide is like a Gucci slide, like a shoe. Slide is, flat is also a shoe. Are there any other shoes? Stone, paper, Mary Jane, castle, mule, Piper, Peter. None of those are shoes. Mary Jane from Spider-Man? Is it a Spider-Man? Mary Jane and Peter? Why didn't I see that before? Paper, mule, Dr. Octopus, Uncle Ben, Piper. What kind of pipers are there? There's Peter Piper, there's Pied Pipers, there's Sandpipers, there's the bird Sandpiper. That's the only pipers I know. There's stone, paper, sandstone, sandpiper, sandcastle, sandpaper. Ugh! And now we're going to find out what this other freaking category is, because that, my friends, is the purple. Yeah, it is. Purple first, because I know birds. Pays to know birds. We have to have some successes in our life. Well, that means that Mary Jane and Slide and Flat and Mule have something to do with each other. And we're just going to guess because I don't know. What? A mule is a shoe? A Mary Jane is a shoe? What is a Mary Jane? Okay, well, that's not something I know. The fact that that shoe has its own name is wild to me. We only needed like 3 words for shoes, you guys. Boot, sneaker, and shoe. Those are the 3 you need. Okay, and then the other one was probably the plant one. Plant, weed, water, and prune. And then Peter, taper, fade, dwindle. It couldn't have been Peter and Mary Jane because I already knew that it was in the yellow. Perfect. I got perfect. Not only perfect, but I got a perfect reverse rainbow, everybody. So take that. And let's see how that was a 3 of 5 difficulty. But I think it was harder than that because Mary Jane is not a shoe. Only 2% of people got that thing first. Wow, most people got the shoes first. I am uninformed on shoes. Well, John, your book is coming out next week. Congratulations. Everything is Tuberculosis at everythingistb.com. Congrats on all the good reviews that have been coming in. And I will, again, I'll see you on Tuesday.